so that you never really knew where you stood with the authority. Because the authority gives you the impression that you are so bad intrinsically that at any time you ought to be punished and eaten up. And it's only a matter of mercy that you're not being eaten up. So the prayers of the Christian church are full of the idea, O Lord, we are not worthy, and since it is only of thy great mercy that we continue to survive at all, we humbly beseech thee, etc., etc. Imagine going around with that feeling about the nature of reality, that it is watching you all the time, that you're always on probation, like a released prisoner. And therefore there is an all-seeing eye at every moment of the day and night surveilling you, much more efficiently than any big brother could watch you through tiny TV cameras in your bedroom. I know a friend of mine who is a devout Catholic, and in her toilet, but she is different, she has a sense of humor. And in the toilet, you know, it's an old-fashioned one, there's a tank and a pipe coming down to the john. And there's a little placard on it with a big eye painted. And in Gothic letters underneath it, it says, Thou, God, seest me. So always, everywhere, according to this mythology, there is the eye of the paternal judge watching you. Now, what can you do with a situation like that? If that's the way things really are, you don't know whether this Lord has a sense of humor, and whether you can say to him, hey, look, don't take such an advantage of me like that. Turn down that light a little, close off your eyes sometimes. You don't need to be all that particular. You know I can't do anything to you. I can't knock you over. Why do you need to bug me all the time? Sort of attitude is too much. And so people couldn't stand it. You know, 600 years of it was enough. And it became intolerable. Really intolerable. Because everybody knew they were sinners, and that they were doing all the things against the rules in the book, and nobody could possibly put up with it. So the only thing they could do to relieve themselves of this horrible father figure was to make out that the universe didn't have a father at all. That it was really an orphan, not even virgin born. It didn't even have a mother. In other words, in order to escape from the mythology of a conception of ultimate reality, which was much too intelligent and much too nosy, people had to invent a conception of the ultimate reality that was completely banal and dead. So the second Western mythology is the mythology of the mechanical universe, which is a fluke emerging from a process of absolutely blind energy. And you must notice the language in which the great thinkers of the 19th century thought about the world. Freud, for the basic psychic energy, used the word libido, which in 19th century Vienna was exceedingly uncomplimentary. Libido, blind lust. And so in the same way, the science philosophers of the 19th century talked about the world as being based on brute force, unintelligent energy, and worked out a conception of man as a really rather unfortunate natural fluke. Consciousness, reason, and indeed also the passions and feelings and desires of the human heart were nothing but the end product of a roulette wheel of natural selection. It's a most curious paradox that those philosophers of the 19th century who denied the supernatural origin of man and who insisted that man is simply a part of nature, one of the members of nature, nevertheless set up a state of alienation between man and nature without precedent. I am a part of nature. I am something that nature fluked into being, but nevertheless this fluke is something that nature doesn't care about. It doesn't care about my ego and its future. All that is important to nature is the species. The individual is irrelevant. At the same time, this philosophy arose when we were becoming conscious of the sheer magnitude of the universe. And it took the first impression of this vastness as a pretext for making little of human beings and saying, what do you matter in this huge cosmos? You're just a little fluke. You're just a little nothing at all. This thing goes way on beyond all imagination. And therefore man is just so much fungus on a rock, and a very tiny rock at that. In other words, it took the standpoint, let's set up a scale between two limits. We will, and this is the traditional Western opposition. On the one end of the scale to the left here, you have matter, the inert, the clay put into shape by the potter. On the other end of the scale, you have spirit, which is intelligence. And these are what the mathematicians call limits. And a limit is something you approach, but you never actually get there. Now, what the 19th century mythology did was to think of all things towards the limit called matter. It said, in effect, there is this dead material stuff. It is energetic, but the energy is unintelligent. It's a kind of roaring mechanical energy like fire or electricity or so on. It is not intelligent. And everything is really that. What we call human intelligence and consciousness are merely complicated forms of this primordial energy. And they are nothing but that. In the same way, we are evolved from lower orders of animals. And I can trace my ancestry to a protoplasmal globule, as Poupart says. And, that's what you really are. You're only a complicated protoplasmal globule. Now, do you see the intent behind this mythology? The intent is to deprecate. The intent is, as we say now, to put down the human being, because the human being felt that hitherto he had been put up too far in the wrong way. You are a child of God, and the Lord loves you very dearly, but, that's just insufferable, to be put up in that way. You have an immortal soul. Your life is endless, but it can very well turn out to be a life of endless agony when you fry in hell. And that was a very serious threat to both Protestants and Catholics. And so it's much better, much more comfortable to have a dead universe than a living universe so everlastingly threatening.
The oldest souls in here have been through the worst of the worst. And every lifetime written upon your DNA carries engrams of emotion. You came into the world expecting it to do what it always did. As soon as you started awakening to the truth in the past, you'd have to hide. You might have blocked this from your memory, but I was there, and so was your higher self. Some of you, not too far from here, were burned at the stake. Some of you came back to have it all happen again. How many lifetimes does it take, shaman, before you sit and say, I'm not going to do this again? Or you awaken in a modern society and you say, well, I'm going to go to the meetings, but I'm not going to tell anybody I'm going, because I'm not going to go through that again. Or you're careful who to tell about what you believe, because you're tired of swimming upstream and having the current beat you back against the rocks. Or perhaps you're tired of losing family and friends, or even jobs, because you happen to believe God's inside you. And that is the story of the old soul who is here in the room and listening to these words. And it results in an old soul who comes and stands tall as a light worker and lacks self-worth. And that's an oxymoron. How can you have a lighthouse that's uncertain of its light, or whether it's doing anything right, or whether the waves will come and knock the light out? And that's who's in front of me, because you're all that way. This turnaround cannot instantly create giants and heroes of worth, especially among those who have practiced this for many years on this planet. Think you have it all figured out, and you don't. Not for this energy that's coming, you don't. And that's what we want to address. There is something coming where you will be able to manifest things only dreamed of, but it's going to take belief, realignment, understanding that dimensionally you are more powerful in dimensions you cannot see than the ones you can see. And you weren't taught that in school or by your mother. And that's where we are. And you're going to say, well, what's going to happen, Cryon? Training, practice, intent, design. You're going to have to want to go there. If you do not actively attempt to change, you will always be floating on the surface like the old oil. We use that example because you have an idea of where dark and light goes on the planet. So let's bring this up in a way that you'll understand. Let's talk about that dark and light thing. Yet again, we have given you the information over and over that darkness defined is the absence of light. And yet, what do you do with this? You, in your mythology, have decided it must be intelligent. There has to be a consciousness behind darkness. And because you have decided there is, therefore, you fear it. Never understanding that it will flee from the light. You still don't believe it. Now, there are humans right now saying, wait a minute, Cryon, you mean there's no such thing as evil? I didn't say that. Because this is difficult for you to understand. When humans take that which has no light and apply it to a consciousness of their own design, it becomes human evil design. Now, it has consciousness because a human put it there. But alone, there is no entity out to capture your soul. Period. There is only a balance of dark and light. What humans do with it gives it, therefore, its manifestation. And you're used to a certain balance on the earth. It's not intelligent. That's the first thing that you have to learn, Lightworker. There's no force against you. You don't believe it. You've always been taught there is. The brighter your light, the less darkness will be around. Oh, crying, I love that. How can I make my light brighter? By not fearing the dark. When you fear the dark, you give it your energy, don't you? So what is it you fear? That perhaps you will be in disfavor. That's survival, isn't it? There are so many things here, dear ones, that you're going to have to recalibrate. Who are you trying to please, Lightworker? I'll ask you this. If you're trying to please God, you are pleasing God. I wouldn't be here if you weren't. If you're trying to please those on the other side of the veil, in some cases are your parents looking back at you, you're pleasing them. By the fight that you have put here, by the light that you carry, all is well. Do you feel that? Or are you looking around for some other approval somewhere? Time for you to recalibrate that. There are things you should know about the way you think now and what is going on that's going to change. Right? You mean there's not going to be a struggle? Oh, yes, there will be. This struggle between dark and light will be classic. You're going to watch it like a game. Perhaps even on your own ball fields where it goes back and forth. And it doesn't seem to be one team winning, and it simply goes back and forth. And what will you think about that when that takes place? In your heart of hearts, what are you going to say? Well, we failed. Nothing is happening. And that's because, dear ones, all you are willing to look at is the three-dimensional game field. You're not looking at anything else that might be happening under it or above it. Maybe it's simply a push-pull engine that keeps you busy while something else is happening somewhere else. What if you're a piece of the puzzle working it for something else to happen somewhere else? What if you're a placeholder on this planet? Hard to describe. This is the battle between dark and light. Well, Brian, if darkness has no intelligence, how does it battle us? Here are some attributes of the darkness I wish to share. Number one, it's dark. Number two, because it's dark, it cannot see what you're doing. It's stupid. And that is your advantage, for you can see everything. And this energy of darkness simply is an energy. Like gravity is an energy. Like magnetism is an energy. When you see magnetism work, and you see things come together which are magnetized, do you look at them, give them names and consciousness? only because they moved from one place to another, attracted to one another? You do not. You say, this is physics. It's energy. It moves here to there. Like oil and water is energy. Oil floats because of its density, lighter than water's density, and dark and